no idea about. You know, she was straightforward when, teaching me this stuff and answered any of my questions. Just a really positive experience.
What I think that parents could benefit with the program is just having someone here for you, especially for first-time parents. It can be very isolating and it can be very lonely, and having the home visitor changes that and it feels very good.
For me, having a home visitor is like having a second mom there.
A lot has changed. I'm definitely more knowledgeable taking care of her. And I know that anytime I need advice or help from somebody, I can just call her.
It's just that little positive nudge to, hey, I'm noticing something, let's find a way how to change it. And she's like, you know what, Amanda, let's pick you up, dust you off, and let's go over to, see about either getting your driver's license or seeing about, going to college, see if we can start something for you.
It's totally worth it. Like, even if you're on the fence at first, you don't feel like having a stranger coming in your house and teaching you about your little one, do it anyway. You get the help that you need. You get professional advice on things you may not know about your child. The fact that the program has no fees or anything, it's all totally free, is fantastic.
Yo creo que si conozco a alguien que está próxima a ser mamá, lo primero que haría sería recomendarle el programa, porque te entrega mucho apoyo, mucha información y más que nada como apoyo emocional, una guía, te da una visión diferente de cómo es ser papá aquí, quizás en este país.
Sí, pues es un bonito programa, porque pues es buena persona la señora y los ha atendido muy bien.
Pensé que nada más iba a ser un programa de orientación quizás para los nuevos padres, pero creo que nos llevamos una linda...
All right, and I'd like to invite the Director of Social Services, Dee Dee Parker, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, moving on to item 2, which is public expression. Okay, members of the public in the chamber shall line up at the podium. Okay, anyone on Zoom, utilize the raise hand feature by clicking the raise hand button and pressing 9 if you're calling into the Zoom meeting via telephone. Right, so we'll look to the chambers.
Good morning, Board, County staff. Adam Gaska, Mendocino County Farm Bureau. I'm here this morning to announce that Mendocino County Farm Bureau, along with the Mendocino County Democratic Central Committee and the Mendocino County Women's Political Coalition, is co-sponsoring an online petition on change.org urging this board to restore the offices of Treasurer Tax Collector and Auditor Controller into 2 separate independent offices elected by the voters of Mendocino County. It is our belief that there is strong community support for this action, as is evidenced by the strong opposition to the initial consolidation of the 2 offices into 1. The debacle surrounding the recent litigation surrounding the Auditor, Controller, Treasurer, Tax Collector aside, the Board of Supervisors didn't support the office of the Auditor, Controller, Treasurer, Tax Collector at the same level that it supported that work that was moved into the CEO's office during her absence. We would prefer that this board fully support the work of the newly restored Auditor, Controller, Treasurer, Tax Collector and provide the same resources as it had during her absence. We are firmly opposed to this consolidation of power into unelected departments that would reduce the transparency of county finances and take away the ability of the voters to hold public officials accountable. We urge you to reverse course and return the power of oversight of county finances to the will of the voters. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mark Donegan, self-healing practitioner and educator, ordained minister, aka Goldilocks. Along that same line, my gratitude and appreciation is to Shamice Cubison for all she's been through and all she's stood for. Everything that we voted her in for. I'm not going to talk about what Adam just talked about. I really believe in what he said. I really believe the board didn't listen to anyone that got us into this, including myself. I was up here many times. I injected myself into it by talking to Shamice myself, which a lot of you didn't do. And when you did, it was in a hostile tone. And so as a citizen, I would ask that again stop in whatever future that we have going forward. You've created quite a mess, so please don't make it any worse on your way out. As a member of the Behavioral Health Advisory Board, I'm going to speak just for myself always. But there was a lot of stuff that was put out in the last session about our board. First of all, I want to put out gratitude and appreciation to Ziggy Daniels. I met her at the market, I often do, and she gave me some information and input that's what I'm here for and what we're here for. That is our main job. Our job is not picking apart the RFPs and the contracts. And outcome data, I agree. It's the same thing you did with the auditor controller. You outcome dated us to death. And what its import is, who knows? Personally, I get a lot of mental health myself, and I judge my own data and my own outcomes in a way that nobody else has done. As far as the board goes, nobody cared about this board. I kept yelling about that. Nobody lined up for seats. Now everybody's lined up for seats. Now they're arguing about how they were made. I don't care how they were made. We've got a pretty good board right now. It's a new board. We've lost a lot of institutional knowledge, but at least everything's up and honest, and public comment is always welcome on everything. I've pleaded for that. So now that it's topic, I would appreciate that everyone would show up. And I think that we're doing everything as best that we can. I appreciate Supervisor Klein's time and the energy she's put into our board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, County Supervisors and staff. My name is Estelle Clifton. I'm a registered forester in Redwood Valley. I'm here today to talk about the petition that I feel will help the voters express their concerns in a way that doesn't mean they have to come to the chamber. In regards to putting the offices back to 2 elected officials, when you have completely different functions, then the duties can be focused on those functions. And I would say, you know, you look at elections and assessor, those are completely different functions. There's not always an efficiency if you end up having not the focus on one duty. So I know we can go through the timeline with events, but a lot of people spoke in 21 about appointing Ms. Covison to the Auditor Controller Office, and the board chose not to. And then the consolidation moved rapidly after that. At the time, there was discussion about moving some financial controls into the CEO's office, and I don't want to say that that's where this board is going now, but I would say when she was taken out of her position and there was a lot of resources available this last year that weren't available before, and I'd like to see this board continue to support the functions of not just that office, but every office that has staffing needs their jobs rewritten, needs whatever they need, right? So if you have to be in the CO's control to get the resources you need, that's not a good way to support like the functioning of an office. And so I'd like to see, not only do we would like to see those two independent offices, checks and balances in our fiscal oversight removed to two elected positions, but also encourage this board as the oversight body of the functioning of all departments in this county to make sure those resources and support stay available to that office now that Ms. Cubison is back in her elected position. And want to thank Ms. Pierce for her work and all the county staff that works really hard in all of our fiscal departments. And so I'm here to say let's keep moving forward with positive work and support to the good work that goes on in our county, and appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Gizmo. I recently attended a women's gala last Sunday, and I was reminded by our treasurer of the state that we are still the 5th largest economy in the world. That's with a W, world. And so I would like to just put forth some goals. And I know a lot of folks are going to be, oh, there's no money coming down. But we actually have a lot of money in California. And if we focus our grant writers on writing the grants that the state and possibly even the federal government want to hear, that we can get the money that we need. We have a clean slate in our county, and I like to talk dot to dot, so I'm going to kind of go fast here. A lot of folks are looking to get out and do respectively, out in the world, and they need that space, and we happen to have that space here. E-bikes are one of the largest growing modes of transportation, and so a lot of folks are going to want to come here. So one of the things that we should be working on is creating a really safe and viable public transit, and that includes a public transit mall or a hub. There's a lot of counties that we're being compared to that already have a public transit hub and mall, and all it's done is increase revenue and increase people visiting that area. So that is one thing that we can attach to our emergency evacuation plans for each city. If we can point our grant writers to pushing towards writing grants that include our public transit and our rails to trails and get out and bike, we can increase our mental health, we can increase the capacity of folks who don't have vehicles to get to education, older folks. And so I think it's really imperative that we link our emergency evacuations from each city to our public transit in order to get this money that is out there. And we should be working with our field representatives, Rihanna and Monica. Monica is new. She works for Scott Alonzo, who is one of our federal representatives. She's only about 24, 25 years old, and she's really available in her office. So I respectfully would hope that the board would visit with her and see how we can get some of this money from California moved into our public transit, which also create a lot of public safety, which I think is the board's goal for the next fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else in the chambers, any online comments?
We have one online, Ted Stevens.
Yeah, can you hear me okay? This is Ted Stevens from Yorkville.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you should put the offices of the auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector back the way they were. The scheme by the Board of Supervisors has been an absolute tragedy. There's been great carnage. It's going to be very, very expensive for the county. I think you should take steps to put that back as two separate independent offices as soon as possible. We need the direct accountability. We have not gotten accountability by the Board of Supervisors. This function should not be brought back further under the Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other online comments?
Seeing none.
All right. So we'll move on to the consent calendar. Supervisor Norvell, would you like to make a comment?
No comment. I guess I will be, or I would like to read 3F during, I believe it's 4D.
Okay.
If we approve it on the consent.
Okay, very good. All right, Supervisor Klein. Okay, seeing no further comments from the board, is there public comment on the consent calendar? Seeing none in the chambers, any online?
Seeing none online, and through the chair, if I may, for the record, proper notice was established.
Okay. So, let's see, we're looking for a motion.
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay. Any further comment? We'll vote by the button.
The motion carries unanimously.
Very good. Okay, we'll move on to item 4A. Discussion and possible action, including acceptance of informational reports from the assessor, clerk, recorder, registrar of voters, auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector, district attorney, sheriff, and various county department heads or designees. Okay, Ms. Covison.
Good morning, Chair Haschak,
Welcome.
members of the board, Shamice Covison, auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector. I'd like to let you know that I returned to my office on Wednesday, February 26th, out of being out of the office for nearly 17 months. First, let me express my appreciation for the hard work that the staff in the auditor's office and the treasurer tax collector's office have done to continue many of the tasks we had begun prior to my absence and other projects initiated without me. I recognize that the last couple of years has been very stressful and often challenging. I appreciate the patience and support of the board, other county department heads, county employees, and the public as I endeavor to learn about what has been done in my absence. This includes changes already implemented, changes that are in process, and operations that may need to be on the list for further evaluation and changes. It is my sincere hope that my staff and I, with the cooperation of other county departments, will be able to continue moving things forward without losing momentum. In the last 2 weeks, I've been working with IT to reestablish my access to county systems and technology equipment. I've met individually with some of my staff. I attended the Northern Area Regional State Association of County Auditors meeting in Colusa last week and submitted next year's department proposed budgets, largely relying on information provided by Sarah Pierce and other department employees. In the coming days, I will be reviewing the report prepared by Regional Government Services, meeting with RGS and Chandler Asset Management, the Treasury Pool Asset Management consulting firm. My aim is that we continue to make positive progress on the various ongoing improvement projects. To ensure that we have the resources to make that happen, I plan to bring forward an amendment to the Regional Government Services Agreement to extend that agreement through December of 2026. In addition, I ask that the board fund budget appropriation requests that are deemed to be necessary to continue the important work of the Auditor's Office and the revenue collection efforts of the Treasurer Tax Collector offices. Also, in order to avoid delays and the need to pause many tasks while I research and revisit all of the areas evaluated while I was out of the office, we could use the help of other departments. It would be especially helpful if the Chief Executive Officer ensured that my access to essential CEO staff, including Sarah Pierce, so that my staff and I can obtain the necessary transition information and efficiently continue our work. It would be a shame for some of that work to be lost or for the county to have to pay for those services again or to lose out entirely on the information gained. Finally, I look forward to working with one or two board members where we can discuss any concerns and requests of the board. I look forward to a productive relationship between myself and the board in the future. My staff and I are dedicated to moving forward in order to continue serving the public with fiscal leadership and financial integrity. I will have more to report in the coming weeks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Chief Locatelli.
Good morning, Chair, Board, County staff. Eisen Locatelli, Chief Probation Officer. Wanted to do a quick informational brief for the board. In 2007, the state enacted the California Community Corrections Performance Incentives, known as SB 678. It formed the original Community Corrections Partnership in an advisory capacity to probation. 4 years later, AB 109 created what you all know as the Executive CCP, and I'll be presenting the AB 109 CCP budget here on April 22nd. The intent behind SB 678, though, is codified in Penal Code Section 1228 per ND, and the intent behind that law is providing sustainable funding for improved evidence-based probation supervision practices and capacities while improving public safety outcomes among adult felons who are on probation, improving felony probation performance measured by a reduction in felony probationers who are sent to prison because they are revoked on probation or convicted of another crime while on probation, will reduce the number of new admissions to state prison, saving taxpayer dollars and allowing a portion of the state savings to be redirected to probation for investing in community corrections programs. So I was at our Day Reporting Center graduation last week, and during one of the speeches I gave, I told the audience back when I started in 2007, my personal caseload was over 140 people. Two of the graduates there that night used to be on my caseloads back then. We talked about the differences just in those 17 years of probation practices. 140 is not a manageable or sustainable caseload, and having these smaller caseload sizes allow us to actually know the people that we're supervising. So obviously a lot's changed since 2007. The funding stream as currently written, it no longer provides stability or the incentives that the state enacted in 2007. During COVID, the numbers were frozen by the state. In the last few years, the state has acknowledged needing to address this formula. I'm currently the chair of the Adult Services Committee for the Chief Probation Officers of California, and this has been one of my top priorities. We drafted and approved principles around what a new formula should look like, and I'm actually pleased to say that the governor's administration has taken action, and I've seen draft language that should be coming out either today or sometime this week that fulfills the majority of the principles. It provides a higher base. The SB 678 base is $200,000, no matter the size of your county. But the new formula would be 85% of the frozen formula. In Mendocino County, our frozen formula was $592,000. So 85% of that is clearly more substantial than a $200,000 base. So it provides more sustainability and a higher floor for better budgeting practices. In addition to that, it'll still be incentive-based. 15% of the formula will be based on incentives. Those numbers, previously, you only received $12,000 per inmate that didn't go to state prison. They've decided that 2007 with inflation, so they've moved that number to $17,000. In addition to that, we all know what COLAs are. The SB 678 didn't have a COLA formula. The new model will have a COLA, so the floor, no matter if you're a micro county or a small to medium-sized county like Mendocino, you'll have a COLA built in. So each year, the 678 will provide real revenue that follows along with the inflation. I'm extremely pleased with what I'm hearing out of the governor's administration around 678. And what I would also be asking is when it finally releases, we know that the Senate and the Assembly both have to approve the governor's budget plan, and I'd be looking to each of you five to support any language around this with our representatives. And then some quick highlights around 678. You might want to know, well, what does that mean for our county? That is funding our TAY officer, which is our transition-aged youth. It also supports our behavioral health court officers and our adult drug court officers. Without that funding, those programs wouldn't exist in Mendocino County. So that's just a quick informational update on SB 678 and some of the things that are happening in Sacramento.
All right. Well, thank you, Chief. You know, I asked the chief to come and do this kind of presentation because we talked about it the last meeting to get updates from our department heads, and I think this is the kind of update that we'd like. I certainly appreciate the information you provided and your work on the legislative platform, which has been crucial for providing the county with guidance, but also your leadership at the state level, because you're the president of the chief probation officers, right?
Currently secretary. In 2027, I'll be the president.
Okay, yeah, well, it certainly sounds like your association's doing good work. And so we look forward to this additional funding because we know that these programs are crucial. It's kind of reminded me of, you know, the class size when I was a teacher, and the bigger the class size, the less impact you have on each individual kid. And so it sounds like the same with your caseloads.
Yes, very much similar.
Okay. Seeing no comments from the board, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any further comments from department heads? Mr. Adair.
Good morning, Chair Haschek, members of the board, CEO Antle, County Council Scott. Jeff Adair, Mendocino County OES. California's Tsunami Preparedness Week is March 22nd through the 30th. Mendocino County Office of Emergency Services, in collaboration with the Redwood Coast Tsunami Work Group, Humboldt County and Del Norte counties, will conduct its annual multi-county tsunami exercise on Wednesday, March 26th at 11 a.m. OES will disseminate alert and warning messages to coastal communities, prompting residents to practice their tsunami and earthquake preparedness plans. Individuals within the tsunami hazard zone, are encouraged to practice evacuation procedures by physically walking to higher ground. In a tsunami zone, any strong earthquake shaking means immediate evacuation is critical. The shaking is your warning to go. Don't delay for official notifications. Those outside of the tsunami hazard zone are urged to consider their response to a significant earthquake. So the memory aid is, when in doubt, drill it out. If you're not sure if it's big enough to cause a tsunami, good time to practice. If you're not sure if you're in the tsunami hazard zone, you can visit the Redwood Coast Tsunami Work Group website for tsunami zone maps. That's Redwood Coast Tsunami Work Group website. Residents can register for the event by completing a brief survey that can be found on our website, mendoready.org. So again, March 26th at 11 a.m. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right. Seeing no further department head reports, let's see, we'll open it up to public comment.
I have a comment on the last agenda item. The tsunami warnings include sirens, and we have been waiting for our sirens in Redwood Valley for a long time. I believe that some precedent takes note here. There's not a lot of deaths from tsunamis over years that I can remember. I'm just shooting off the top of my head, but I know that we have had a lot of deaths due to fire, and our early warning system is crucial for our outer lying areas, and we need to know if we need to evacuate. And so taking precedence over or giving a coastal area precedence over an inland area is somewhat, in my opinion, discriminatory. And so we really need to focus, Darcy, on making sure that we get those sirens. And that needs to be like a
Gizmo,
main priority. I still have 2 minutes.
Please
Thank you.
address the board, though.
Thank you. And so I just want to make sure that that point is well taken, that we need those sirens, especially for our outer lying areas and in the hills. And we need to include the FM radio stations as part of our evacuation plan. I want to thank Jeff and the OES, the rest of the folks who have worked pretty diligently with me and taken my comments. But this is crucial to getting our fire insurance back and to making sure that the rest of the state comes here and says, look what they're doing in Mendocino County. If we want to be able to get our fire insurance back, if we want to start moving money through this area and creating a viable space for all of us to live safely, we have to make sure that we can have a lookouts, that we can have our communications, that we can have our evacuations, and that we all need to know where our safety zones are. If we can do that efficiently, insurance companies will want to insure us. They won't look at us as such a large fire hazard. So we can take things that might be bad and turn them into good. We just have to look to the future for that to happen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Seeing no further comments in the chambers, any online?
Seeing none.
Okay. Okay, so we will move on to item 4C. We're going to skip 4B for the moment. Go to 4C, which is discussion and possible action, including acceptance of presentation by the Mendocino County Department of Social Services, social workers regarding the services and impact of social work within our community. Supervisor Norvell, would you like to start it off?
I would like to read I would like the staff to have the opportunity to do their presentation.
Okay.
And then when they're finished, I'll read the proclamation we just approved on consent.
Okay, very good. Right.
Hello, board. My name is Hannah Lee. I'm a social worker supervisor in adult and aging services. I'd like to speak a little bit about what we do in adult and aging services. First off, in 2024, we had 1,150 IHSS applicants. That's in-home supportive services, which is a program to keep dependent adults and elders safe in their own home. We've had 1,592 reports of abuse to adult protective services. And we've had 40 individuals who've been helped with advocacy for Social Security. I'd like to touch on 2 of these individuals. The first is Gladys. Gladys was your typical grandma of the neighborhood. Had cookies, you could go by her house. She was always there for anyone in the neighborhood. Now she's in her 80s. She has frequent calls to the fire department for falls, and they go out there every time, about once a week, help her off the floor. And eventually they do a report to Adult Protective Services for self-neglect, as the home has fallen into disrepair and Gladys can no longer care for her needs. Adult Protective Services responds and goes out to the home and sees the condition of the home and the condition that Gladys is in. So they help her with getting referrals to Meals on Wheels and to in-home supportive services. In-home supportive services responds. They go out to the home, evaluate Gladys, and they can see that she does need help with getting her meals prepared, with cleaning the home, as well as doing some care for getting dressed and other needs. So they assess her level of need and they assess her for hours. Gladys unfortunately does not have any family or neighbors that can assist her and become an in-home supportive services provider. So referral is done to what we call the public authority, and a list of names is sent out to her. From that list of names, she finds somebody who's willing to come in and help her every day for about 2 hours a day and make her meals that she doesn't get from Meals on Wheels, help her with getting dressed in the morning, as well as keeping the home in good repair. Through this, Gladys is no longer at risk of being placed in a skilled nursing facility. She's able to stay safe in her home, which I think is an amazing thing for a woman in her 80s. Next is Tom. Tom's in his 50s. He usually bicycles to and from work. While doing that, he was struck by a car. He had a traumatic brain injury as well as disabilities to his physical body. The social worker at the hospital helps him get attached with Medi-Cal so he's not on the hook to pay all those hospital bills. She also starts and helps him with Social Security disability. After he leaves, he gets overwhelmed with the Social Security system and keeps on calling the social worker at the hospital. So the social worker at the hospital reaches out to our general assistance program, and the social worker there is able to advocate for him and help him navigate the Social Security system. The social worker at the hospital also does a referral to in-home supportive services. And in-home supportive services responds, goes to the home, and assesses him for assistance. His daughter has been helping him. She's been losing hours at work because he frequently calls her and she has to leave work to go help him. Because of in-home supportive services, now he can hire his daughter. His daughter now has income with helping her dad. He's able to do that instead of having to report to a job in the community. As you can see, in-home supportive services, adult protective services, and adult and aging services has a major impact on our members of Mendocino County. Thank you for your time.
Morning, everyone. My name is Amanda Coggins. And I'd like to start by saying that I'm truly honored to be a representative for Family and Children's Services today. I'm a social worker in the wraparound program. Family and Children's has lots of different programs, starting from hotline taking referrals about child abuse, neglect, suspected child abuse and neglect, to going out and doing investigations, opening long-term cases to provide supportive services to families to unify, doing foster care, resource family placements, eligibility. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So wraparound's a little bit different. I've worked in the wraparound program for 3 years. I have a bachelor's degree in social work, also working on my master's degree, which is wonderful because our organization supports the higher education with the Title IV program. It's a great place to recruit educated social workers. There's a lot of reasons why I was drawn into this field, one of the biggest ones being because I've experienced working with effective social workers versus less effective social workers, and it really does make a difference making any change. Part of what makes the work that I do in wraparound special and unique is that I get to bring some of my lived experience in navigating different systems of care into the work that I do to help support families in gaining strength and resilience as they learn how to navigate their own obstacles. Wraparound is a very holistic, strengths-based, and collaborative process where we bring everybody that works with the family together, the team, to kind of streamline services and make sure the family's getting everything they need from the community. It's a family-driven program that really empowers the family to take the lead role in addressing the underlying needs that they have to make the changes that need to happen for sustainability. We aim to improve mental health and well-being, increase access to services. We reduce out-of-home placements, including short-term residential treatment programs. We strive to help the youth have better academic and social outcomes. We reduce system burdens and is a much more cost-effective way than other alternatives. The families we serve have some of the greatest and most complex needs that would be difficult for them to address on their own. Wraparound does exactly what the name is. We wrap around the family. We build trusting and respectful relationships with care providers and the youth to provide intense support. We help them learn problem-solving skills. We provide coaching. We do crisis stabilization. The parents and the youth both have their own advocates that work with them specifically and then come together as part of the team. There's really no way to outline all the ways that wraparound can support families. Since each family's needs are different, we meet them where they're at. and help them navigate what they've identified as needs. Our team is small, but our efforts are immense and impactful. And with appropriate resources and staffing, we could increase the number of families we're able to serve throughout the county, to create lasting change for our highest risk families within our communities. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Christina Griffith. I am a social worker and I am the supervisor of the Welfare to Work program. And in Welfare to Work, our social worker is Connie Rodriguez. Welfare to Work is a program where if a family with children is receiving cash aid, they get connected to us and we work with them to help them develop self-sufficiency. Connie works specifically with 3 programs: How Learn, which is pregnant and parenting teens. She works with family stabilization, working short-term with families who are in crisis, and she works with chronically truant young people. Connie does a multitude of things. She works with the Cal Learn, which is pregnant and parenting teens, to help get them graduated. She works with them to connect them with WIC and other referrals within the community. She helps them if they need help navigating government systems, getting dentistry and healthcare, housing, childcare, and mental health needs. She will also meet with or connect with the schools and get 3-month reports to see how they're doing and if there are barriers in their way to them attending school or graduating. And she works with helping them to figure out transportation and school supply needs. In the Chronic Truant program, Connie works with them to meet with families, connect with teachers, counselors, and family supports to find out if they're not attending school, what are the barriers to that. She will often check in with the schools to see if they are there that day and to find out how they count chronic truant, try to stop that from happening so that they don't have to deal with that. She often meets with them. In social work, we talk about meeting them where they're at, asking them what are those barriers, what is stopping them from attending school. Connie works in social work to practice motivational interviewing skills, asking them open-ended questions, and remembering that when we meet these people as social workers, it's often when they are their most vulnerable. Connie also created a program that we use currently. When the families are not doing what they're supposed to in our program, they can go into what's called sanction, where they lose part of their benefits. Connie created the SPIT, which is called Sanction, Prevention, Improvement, or Intervention in Transportation. This is our way of helping connect them with transportation services to help get them into the program or get them actively participating again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Social workers are the backbone of our community, serving our most vulnerable population throughout the Mendocino County. Their dedication and commitment makes a difference in countless lives throughout our community. My team and I wholeheartedly thank and appreciate our social workers for all their dedication, their nights, their weekends, their holidays on call and after hours, and their times away from their families so that they can help other families. I want to thank the Board of Supervisors, CEO Antle, and Supervisor Novell for your support and recognition and allowing us the opportunity to highlight some of our work our social workers do daily. Thank you.
Hey, good. 1 minute. Could you identify yourself again, please?
Oh, Dee Dee Parker, the Director of Social Services.
Okay, and we might have some questions if you want to. Okay. Any questions from the board? Yeah, Supervisor Mulheron.
No, I'd like to thank Supervisor Norvell and the team from Social Services for coming today and sharing more about the stories and how you impact folks' lives. When I come to new employee orientation, I always say that it doesn't matter what kind of policies I implement or what I do with the budget. You all are the ones that are out there doing that work. And so I really appreciate everything that you all from the team do for us and our community.
All right. Yeah. Okay, I'd like to thank you all too for coming here and telling us what's happening with social services. A couple things that you mentioned were like the Meals on Wheels program and some of these adult services. You know, we've heard a lot like in the news and some of the area agency on aging about the Older Americans Act not being reauthorized. And so I was just wondering about, without that reauthorization or funding, and it would be $1 million hit to Lake and Mendocino counties for their senior programs. Do you have any idea how that would affect, our programs for seniors?
I'm not sure how that would affect our programs for seniors. I know with in-home supportive services, we have a amount of hours arranged that the state says that we can assess. And we do, if somebody's getting Meals on Wheels, we do what's called alting out the time for one meal, so for lunch. So if somebody were to tell us we no longer get Meals on Wheels, we'd put that time back in so that that care provider can prepare that meal for that individual. As far as the funds for purchasing the food, that would be CalFresh, or we'd refer them to programs like that.
Right. Okay, thank you. And we've also heard about, massive cuts to Medicaid, which is Medi-Cal. And so, it was mentioned that we have, a lot of our families have complex needs. We've heard that 47% of the people in Mendocino County are Medi-Cal eligible. That's over 41,000 people. And that we've seen that in Mendocino County that the ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences, our rates are relatively high compared to other counties in the state. And so if this Medicaid funding, Medi-Cal, CEO Antle and I met with Senator McGuire last week, and he was talking about the state losing $14 billion for Medi-Cal. And so is there any idea how that might impact the county of Mendocino if those cuts are really happening?
If I may, Chair, maybe I can get you started. Darcy Antle, CEO. 47% of the population in Mendocino County is on Medicaid, Medi-Cal in our state. We look to the state to help address and fill those gaps and what services would be cut from our local funding budgets. But we do expect a certain amount of cuts in the areas of services, possibly aid to our folks that received CalWorks, CalFresh funding. So it is a concern. We're watching it daily, and I'll look to the director if she has anything she'd like to add.
I just second CEO Antle's comments that would be a very large hit to our community in particular, and so we are also watching it, and we're going to reevaluate if it happens.
Yeah, thank you. I guess it's kind of a question or statement to the community too, that people need to be aware of the potential effects that this might have on Mendocino County residents. Right, seeing no further, Supervisor Norvell.
Yeah, if Chair, I'd like the opportunity now to read the proclamation that we passed on the consent and then present it to Ms. Parker.
Certainly, go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, Ms. Parker, thank you for reaching out and asking for this opportunity to share what your department does with the public. The proclamation of the Mendocino County Board of Supervisors recognizing March 2025 as Social Worker Appreciation Month in Mendocino County. Whereas the social work profession has existed for more than a century and has been dedicated to improving human well-being and enhancing the basic needs of all people, especially the most vulnerable among us, and whereas this year's Social Worker Month theme, Compassion in Action, embodies how social workers help empower individuals, families, communities, and our society to overcome hurdles that prevent them from achieving better well-being. And whereas the Mendocino County social workers work daily and tirelessly on the front lines to help people overcome barriers and issues such as substance abuse disorders, mental illness, death, grief, child abuse and neglect, elder and dependent adult abuse and neglect, and income and housing instability. And whereas the social workers continue to stand ready to assist Mendocino County citizens in overcoming present and future challenges, including providing 24/7 in-person response to reports of abuse or neglect, and supporting families with connections to treatment, educational resources, and community programs and services to promote safety, self-sufficiency, and well-being. And whereas social workers and the team who help support social workers work in all facets of our society to meet people no matter where their circumstance and empower them to live to their fullest potential. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of the County of Mendocino hereby proclaim March 2025 as Social Work Appreciation Month in the County of Mendocino, and encourage all to thank a social worker.
Okay, thank you all for the presentation. Okay, are there any public comments? Seeing none in the chamber, any online?
Seeing none online.
All right, so I'm looking for a motion to accept the presentation.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Okay, vote by the button.
The motion carries unanimously.
Very good. All right, so moving on to item 4B. If we're all right, we'll move into it. Okay, discussion and possible direction to staff regarding a presentation on Mendocino County's preliminary fiscal year 25-26 budget. Okay, we'll look to staff.
Chair, if I may. Thank you. Darcy Antle, CEO. As we look forward to the 25-26 fiscal year, we are all focusing on how to provide the most services given the limited financial resources. The county teams are continuing to look at new and for renewable resources of funds, focusing inward to increase productivity and efficiency, all the while trying to support and execute the will of this board as the representatives of the people of Mendocino County. As we move towards as we end the 24-25 fiscal year, I would like to remind this board of the outstanding accomplishments the board and the team have achieved. Elimination of a general services department, reduction of the use of one-time funds for this fiscal year and last fiscal year. Worked through many issues with the property tax system Aumentum. Continued to make improvements in the enterprise system Tyler Munis. Supported 6 financial audits. Hired great leaders in public defender, ag department, social services, and HR. Paid back Measure B funds of $7 million. Developed 22 fire district contracts that pay out over $5 million of a general tax of Measure P, Camp TOT, and Prop 172 funds. Managed winter storms while working on submitting the emergency operation plan to the state. Held the first BOS session workshop in January. Completed the 911 bunker, securing the system using grant funds. Installed telematics, reducing insurance claims, and entered into a lease for one of our buildings with a great community partner, CAL FIRE. These are just a few examples of what we can accomplish when we all work towards a common goal of financial sustainability of our county government. I look forward to gains into the new future with our new team, and we will turn it over to Tony Rakes and Sarah Pierce and Jessica Sandoval.
Good morning, Chair Haschak, members of the board, CEO Antle, County Council Scott, Tony Rakes, Deputy CEO. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak on our budget 25-26 budget workshop. We'll start off here with, we have a short presentation for you and then discussion and questions at the end. So we'll get right into it here today. What we're starting with is a what we know. Now keep in mind what we know for fiscal year 25-26. They're estimates right now as departments submit their budgets to the budget team. So as time goes on, as we move into the budget conferences next week, we will know more. We'll have firm numbers from the departments as we enter into those conversations and then start to discuss the changes or adjustments that may or may not need to be made. So here, the important thing to know here is that our salaries and benefits, what we refer to as our 1000 series, the estimate based on the department submissions. Now this says current department submissions. Of course, this was uploaded last week, so there have been some changes, so keep that in mind. But at the time, last week when we uploaded this presentation, the increases were estimated at about 7% in the salary and benefit category, that 1000 series, over the 24-25 numbers that were budgeted for. That's a fairly significant increase. And that's also significant because the 1000 series makes up approximately 57% of our general fund budget. Again, that's based off of our 24-25 revised budget. That, if we were to apply that estimated increase based on those submissions to our 24-25 budget for that 1000 series for those salaries and benefits, we jump from about 147 million to 157. Now again, hopefully that number is projected to change as departments continue to submit their budget numbers, but that estimate is based off that 7% on what was submitted as of last week when this document was uploaded. As always, those numbers for the 1000 series don't include any departmental revenue. They don't include non-departmental revenue. They're just the base salary and benefit budget for the departments for the general fund. We'll move on to the next slide. Here is our non-departmental revenue estimate. Now, right now we are at about a $95.7 million non-departmental revenue estimate for 25-26. Our fiscal year 24-25 projection for the same revenue is a little higher at $96.7 million. So that does include the Measure P funding, but that does not include any one-time funding infusion to balance the budget. So that excludes any of the one-time funding. This is ongoing recurring revenue that this represents. What we wanted to illustrate here too, to show what we truly have to work with, is what we referred to as our OTOs, or operating transfers out. And these are a variety of different reasons we would do this. This includes COPs, those certificates of our participation, the debt service at 2.4 million. We have the roads that funding that immediately goes to that budget, Measure O for the library, Camp TOT funding, water, and so on, Measure P. And that total is $14.4 million that gets transferred out above the line, as we refer to it. And what we're left with non-departmental revenue to balance the general fund budget is estimated at $81.3 million. Currently, we are looking at a general fund ask. Now again, this is preliminary. This is based on what has been submitted by the departments, and it's subject to change. And of course, as we go through the budget conferences, as we further discussions, it will change. But we're looking at a general fund ask above what we have available in revenue, in non-departmental revenue, of about $28 million. So as we work through this process, that number will decrease. We'll have a more firm number to bring to this board at the next budget workshop so that we can communicate some hard numbers based on departments submitted. We'll get away from that estimate category. We'll have some firm numbers to discuss, talk about, and then hone in on to really talk about where we truly are. We'll move on to the next slide. Here, we wanted to bring up the cannabis program. Now, this is the cannabis program in a post-LJAGP grant funding world. So in prior fiscal years, the cannabis program has been funded using primarily grant funding, but in this next fiscal year, that will no longer be the case. And so we wanted to, of course, make the board aware of this, and that the departmental fees charged by the cannabis department, including cannabis tax revenue, is anticipated to cover the cost of the program, but just cover the cost of the program. This is assuming that that's assuming the current tax rate and the projected tax rate. Now that includes the 40% tax reduction in calendar year 2025 and the 35% reduction in calendar year 26. So that anticipated coverage of the department costs with departmental fees, departmental tax, or the cannabis tax is contingent on that assumption. And here below we have a reminder here regarding Measure AJ that was proposed in November of 2016, which was an advisory measure that was voted on and approved by the voters that advised the majority use of cannabis tax revenue for cannabis regulation, for mental health services, county road repair, and fire and medical emergency services. So as we look forward into this next budget, as we have more information, as we understand exactly where we are with our department ask and understand the details a little bit better, we will be addressing and make this board aware of any proposed risks there or opportunities when it comes to the cannabis program and revenue. We'll move on to the next slide. Here at the mid-year budget conversation, we did talk about deferred maintenance and maintenance priorities. We wanted to do this as well for the upcoming fiscal year and talk where we are in terms of projects that we have. At the mid-year budget workshop, we talked about the top 5 deferred maintenance projects. In this presentation, in this budget workshop, we did attach in attachment A the full list from our facilities department with priorities and estimated costs for the projects that had them. We have 33 projects prioritized and recommended for funding by our facilities department. That includes 25 priority 1 projects, 4 priority 2 and priority 3 projects. Now that indicates, of course, a deferred maintenance scenario that we find ourselves in, where we have many high and critical projects that need funding. Those priority 1 projects, based on the estimated project costs, come out to about $11.3 million, $11.4 million, with the project 2 and 3, the priority 2 and 3 categories making up almost $3 million, sorry. With a grand total of for these 33 projects that are in that attachment A coming to about $14.4 million. Now keep in mind, these are estimates and they may be based off of old quotes and need to be revised. So this is just an estimate. 26 projects are not prioritized for funding and are included in that attachment as well. And I want to pass it to Deputy CEO Sarah Pierce to talk a little about Policy 33 and maintenance funding.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors, CEO Antle, County Council Scott, Sarah Pierce. As previously discussed, the EO is working on updating Policy 33. As part of this process, we have reached out to various counties and will be bringing forward recommendations on how to ensure a reliable funding mechanism for capital improvements in the future. While there is still a significant amount of work to be done, we did want to provide a bit of new information that has been discovered. While working as the acting auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector role, and having the ability to better understand the property tax process, I was able to determine roughly 0.68% of the county's portion of the property tax revenue has already been specifically identified for accumulated capital outlay or capital improvements. We realize this may only be a part of the solution, but wanted to have open communication as we continue to work through the policy update. So we'll be back in front of the board soon with recommendations. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to Tony.
Thank you, Tony Rakes, Deputy CEO. We'll move on to the next slide here. Now, we have an funding opportunity here, and this is for the Secure Rural Schools Title III funding. It was discovered, Sarah Pierce made us aware of this, that $200,000 are available for county use, and these funds have a specific use that's defined in the Title III rules. And those funds can be used for, they're listed here, the 5 options. So fund activities under the Firewise community programs, reimburse search and rescue and other emergency services, covered training costs and equipment purchases directly related to emergency services, develop and carry out community wildfire protection plans, and provide or expand access to broadband telecommunication services. Currently, the CEO is making a recommendation to fund or to use those funds for options 2, 3, or 4. Now, for the search and rescue and emergency services, training costs or equipment related to emergency services, or the development and carrying out of community wildfire protection plans. Now, this funding isn't completely, we can't just decide what we're spending it on and move forward. There are restrictions or a process that we do have to follow. So what we would, with that recommendation for those options 2, 3, and 4, it would be to come back with a plan for the use of those funds that we would then present to the board, and then we would move forward with the requirements listed here on this slide, which any use of these funds require a 45-day public comment period before we use those. We have to publish the use of these funds in a local record, what the proposal is and what the intended use of these funds are, and then we have to submit the proposal to a resource advisory committee for our county, and then we have to certify the use of these funds as well. So there is a process we need to follow, but with a proposal, with a plan, we can start that process with board approval and use these funds that we have available. And then we'll move on to the next slide here. Now, as CEO Antle mentioned earlier, there was the board workshop that we had in January of this year, and at that workshop, 4 board priorities were highlighted and identified, and here we're confirming those as being public safety, improving our county roads, economic growth within our community, and an effective government. And so as we develop our fiscal year 25-26 budget, as we go through our budget conferences, as we communicate back to this board where we are with the next fiscal year budget, these priorities are at the forefront of our minds as we develop and work with the departments on the path forward. Next slide. Here's our budget schedule for the rest of this fiscal year. For awareness, we have our budget conferences with departments starting next week, so the week of March 17th, where we will be meeting with every single department about their budget and discuss opportunities, risks, anything that we need to be aware of going forward. We have March 31st, which is a proposed budget listening section in Fort Bragg. Location to be determined. April 8th is our second budget workshop. We intend to have that in Willits at the Willits Justice Center. April 22nd is our county fee hearing. May 6th, our third quarter report for fiscal year 24-25 and a budget workshop, so a fun-filled day there. And June 3rd, 4th is the final budget public hearing to adopt or to make our recommendation for the fiscal year 25-26 budget. And with that, I'd like to open it up for any questions or discussion on the budget workshop and next fiscal year's budget.
All right, well, Supervisor Mulheron.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It always kind of gets me a little angsty, 27 million overestimated. We know that we're not going to be able to do that. So obviously, as the discussions with the teams from the departments are ongoing, that number will be reduced. Was the 14 million in capital maintenance included in that 27 estimate, or was that already incorporated in the budget?
If I may, through the chair, that number is not included in the budget. So that number just represents the estimated cost of all of those projects and is not funded or is not in that 25-26 department submitted amount.
Okay. So we have a lot more rolling up of the sleeves to do, because we do know that the deferred maintenance is going to end up costing the county a lot more, and we have put it off for quite some time. So it sounds like there's a lot more work to be done. Regarding the 7% estimated being over for the salaries, is that overtime? Is that, do we know where that number is coming from?
If I may, through the chair, that number is based on the 1,000 series, so salary and benefits. That will include regular salaries, that will include overtime, that will include county contributions to retirement COLA, any of those that are included in that total salaries and benefit category. So that's total.
Sure, but did we estimate wrong, or what happened?
So that estimate, what we have, is based on the departments submitted from last week, where we were at with what the departments had submitted to the CEO budget team in their 1,000 series. And then what we did is we said, okay, here's our increase so far in those departments from last year. And then we looked at a few other departments where they were going to be, and then we made an estimate based on that number at where our 25-26 number was going to be. Now, as I said earlier, that number will change as we have the rest of our departments submit. So that number, I'm anticipating that percentage will go down, and we'll have a more realistic, we'll have a definitive number once the departments fully submit that we'll communicate back to this board. But we wanted to provide an estimate today for something to work off of, because no matter what, our salaries and benefits is a large portion, as the 24-25 budget indicates, is 57% of our budget is in salaries and benefits. So any overage or any increase in that series will be significant.
Chair, if I may add.
Yes.
That's the ask. So it's back to the ask of the department. So it includes the projected increase, but also if they were asking for additional staff members or various other positions. And so that's something that we have to work through with the departments next.
Okay. And I didn't have any objections to the priorities. I think the board has, stated that public safety is #1 priority, followed by county roads. I had a question about how economic growth fits in. Is that in general throughout the county, or is that the economic growth of the county of Mendocino?
If I may, through the chair, my understanding of that board priority is the economic growth of the county of Mendocino. Yeah.
Supervisor Klein.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the presenters for such thoughtful information well laid out. I'm going to start first with my question around the cannabis program and then the advisory measure from 2016. Historically, can you tell us a little bit about the cannabis tax use? Has that solely supported the cannabis program, or have we been able to fund some of these other priorities that were advised?
If I may, through the chair, Tony Riggs, Deputy CEO. In prior years, the cannabis program has been supported with grant funding, that LJAGP grant funding primarily. And so as according to the advisory measure, those funds as a general tax come into the county non-departmental general revenue and are used to support all of the priorities that are listed in the advisory measure, county roads, public safety, down the line. So
mental health.
Mental health, yes. And so yes, in prior years, with the program being supported by the grant revenue, those funds were used that way.
And what are we forecasting for the future without the grant funding?
Without the grant funding, the departmental fees included with the cannabis tax revenue is projected to just about cover the cost of the program. What will be left after that will be applied in the same way that it has been in prior years.
Thank you. And then my second question is around our facilities and the prioritization. As a new board member, would it be possible to provide a little bit of context around the history? How have we gotten here, and how are these priorities decided?
Yes, and I have here today Jeff Detterman and Doug Anderson, both at the Facilities and Fleet Department, that can speak more directly to that list and how those priorities were determined.
If I may, through the chair, I would just like to add that in my tenure here, which started in 2017, other than emergency repairs on buildings, no additional funding has been set into the CI. So you can see we were in a severe problem years ago, and then we stopped putting money towards it, so that debt has grown over time. But I'll turn it over to Doug and Jeff.
Hi, this is Doug Anderson, Capital Projects Manager. Chair Haschak and board members. Yeah, I think as CEO Anil has indicated, there has been very little capital project funding through, and historically, at least in the 11 years I've been here, it's been on one-time funding at the end of each fiscal year, which leaves us in a position of really only being able to put out fires and take care of the emergencies as they occur. So there's been very little opportunity for the facility staff to plan for and proceed with capital improvements to avoid future emergency repairs. So at this point, the key hope for the facilities department is to get some kind of regular funding that at least allows us to plan, even if it's nominal funding. At least we can start planning on taking care of the most extreme issues that we have, before they become emergencies. So in terms of the list and the projects that we've put in the agenda packet today, that's really just kind of tip of the iceberg, the issues that we know of that are, in buildings where we have staff working, where we're trying to, keep the heating and cooling working and the roofs from leaking are, we're just kind of taking care of the biggest issues that we know of. And, as we experienced at the ag building last year, we have things that just come up that we don't really have a way to anticipate. So it's really just kind of we're doing the best we can, and this is where we are right now.
Yeah, thank you. I hope to see us move to a more long-term sustainable planning approach for our facilities. So thank you for providing a little bit more context. My third question is around secure rural schools. My understanding is that this hasn't been reauthorized by Congress in '24 and has yet to be reauthorized for this year. So the funding availability of this moving forward is going to be right up in the air. I'm wondering what year this was allocated to us, if this is from 22 or 23, and then historically, what have we used secure rural schools funding for in the past?
If I may, through the chair, Sarah Pierce, Acting Assistant CEO. So the accumulation of the $200,000 dates back to 2015. We have not been utilizing the funds since 2015. I was not able to determine what they were used on prior, but currently they're sitting in our miscellaneous trust.
Yeah, thank you. And then for, our board's context, if those who haven't been following secure rural schools, it's a really important piece of funding for western states and rural counties in particular, and for the community's awareness as well, and hope that we can see this authorized by Congress this year.
Supervisor Williams.
Slide 5, the advisory measure AJ. Supervisor Klein had a good question, and I'm wondering if we could get follow-up on the breakdown of funding that went to mental health services, county road repair, fire and emergency services. And I ask, because I haven't seen any go to fire, and I haven't seen any go to EMS. It could be that creative accounting, we could say we're covering coastal valleys through this funds, but the implicit language of AJ was to not supplant existing funding. So I think the public has asked me several times, and I don't have a clear answer. I'm wondering either if we could provide it today or if it could come back next meeting, the dollars that were allocated in the three categories other than cannabis regulation.
If I may, through the chair, I think we can do some research and pull some more definitive numbers at a later meeting, whether or not that's the next budget hearing or the next budget workshop or another meeting that we determine.
Okay. Thank you.
Supervisor Norvell.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. First of all, thank you for the discussion around policy 33. I agree with my colleagues that it's extremely important. We talk about, or staff talked about putting out fires. That it's unfortunate because it's cheaper to prevent a fire than it is to suppress a fire, but it is where we are. And I appreciate staff doing what they can with next to nothing. It cannot be an easy job. I just wanted to point that out. And then lastly, around board priorities, for me, I don't like to talk about economic growth without tying it to street level homelessness. I think it has street level homelessness has an extreme adverse effect on economic growth. It's tough to convince somebody to invest in your community and grow your revenues when street level homelessness affects those businesses. So maybe I'm on my soapbox here, but it's important to me to marry the two, and I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Supervisor Klein.
Yeah, really quickly, I want to thank Supervisor Norvell for pointing that out. And recently, there have been some members of the community meeting and discussing, what's happening here locally. And there really is a loss of pride in our community right now, and folks that have historically invested in our community are reconsidering their investments and where their business efforts are lying, and that is connected to our efforts with street level homelessness and just kind of our county culture in general. And this is going to have some severe impacts on our own county revenues if we're not having economic growth. And I also want to highlight the potential impacts of economic prosperity with the loss of water through the Potter Valley project. And these are some really serious threats that we're facing. So I appreciate staff's diligence in looking at our county finances, and I'm glad we're moving in a more sustainable direction.
All right. Well, I've got a few questions and comments. Thank you for the presentation. I think it was very well done. We do have a lot of issues in the county, and this budget, it's going to be this process from now till June that we're going to have to make some hard decisions. But first of all, with the maintenance priority list, I think it was very well done. And it certainly gives us a clear idea, because we do have these emergencies, situations with rain coming through the ceilings of certain buildings. And so, from my understanding, that's about $7 million of kind of, we got to do it right now situation. And then the others are, would lesser importance, but still important nonetheless. But I think the attachment A really lays it out clearly for where we are with all of the buildings. We just approved the voluntary separation incentive program for 2 more positions. And we saw last year when we did that with 3 positions, we netted about $600,000 in savings. And so hopefully 2 more positions will get us maybe 400,000 in savings there. With the policy 33, we certainly need to proceed and come up with this long-term solution to the funding of these critical issues of our buildings. But when we turn to the revenue area of the county, certainly, we have expenses, but, with the revenues, we've talked in the past about the A87 cost. And are we recovering at this point all that we can with the A87 cost?
If I may, Chair, I'll start with that. Darcy Antle, CEO. We've worked a lot in the last year and a half with the acting auditor controller and Kiki DeLong from the auditor controller's office to have more transparency and to understand that plan better. We had started a number of meetings with departments so they could look into it and we could see it further. And at this point, we look forward to continuing that work with auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector, Shamiz Cubison, as well as Kiki DeLong from that office to gain more insight into if we're maximizing it.
Okay. Are there outside agencies that we could recover A87 costs from too?
Our belief is yes, but I'll turn that over to Assistant CEO Sarah Pierce.
If I may, through the chair, Sarah Pierce. With the research that I had started conducting with Kiki DeLong in the auditor's office, I do believe that there could be potential additional revenue that is recouped through the A87 for non-general fund departments, but we would have to defer to the auditor's office to continue those conversations.
But I'm also referring to outside agencies.
Correct. Part of those non-general fund agencies would include outside of the county.
Okay, like the County Office of Education or...
For example, and they may already be getting the A87 charge, but I do believe that there is room for opportunities with other outside agencies to recoup our fees, in addition to some of the grant funding departments that may have historically not been charged the A87.
Okay, so what would be the process for making sure that those are recouped fully?
We would need to work with the auditor's office to identify the entities that may not be receiving their full A87 cost and proceed with having the auditor's office invoice them in a mechanism. But once again, it would need to be working with the auditor controller's office.
Okay, is that something that we could do? Can we make a commitment to do that?
Certainly my office can reach out to work with them, but again, it's the calculation from the auditor controller's office. We can ask.
Okay. We've also talked about the Williamson Act, and recovering the values that were, to make sure that they were entered correctly. So have we been progressing along those lines? And, I went to talk to Katrina Bartolome, but she was not in the office this week. But are we making progress along those lines?
If I may, through the chair, Tony Riggs, Deputy CEO, I certainly don't want to speak for the Assessor Clerk Recorder's Office or Katrina, and I think that she would be the one to speak on that item and answer that question, which we can reach out to her and talk to her about providing some information either at the next department head update or at the next budget workshop, if the board wishes.
Okay, because my understanding is that the 2021 bills need to be recovered this year, otherwise they fall off. And so I just want to make sure that we're on track with that. Okay. Also, another source of revenue is the transient occupancy tax. And we've talked about the short-term rentals, and are we collecting all of those taxes? So has there been work done in that arena?
If I may, through the chair, Sarah Pierce, with my time in the Auditor, Controller, Treasurer, Tax Collector's Office, there was some initial work through a contract where we were identifying hosts that were not compliant, and some of our staff was reaching out to those. I believe that there's additional work that could be done on that contract, or reevaluating the contract, but I would defer to the Auditor, Controller, Treasurer, Tax Collector's Office to answer those questions.
Okay, so some of these projects that have been initiated, we just need to make sure that they keep going forward, right? Okay. And then the secure rural schools, and I worked a lot in this realm when I was a teacher, and certainly those are crucial funds for rural schools, but certainly to have this $200,000 available that I don't think we knew about before is something good thing for the county. And you give us the recommendation of the items 2, 3, and 4 from page 7. And so, I totally support coming back with a work plan, and it doesn't have to be 2, 3, or 4. It could be split up between those 3 endeavors, right?
My understanding of the funds is yes, it could be split up between those options, and that whatever plan is proposed in the funding that's decided for the projects, we would present to the board and the board would approve or adjust as the feedback comes in.
If I may, through the chair, one additional piece of information is these funds have to be used by September of 2026. So there is a timeline on this.
Okay. So I would hope that when we make a recommendation that it comes back, that we have staff come back with a plan for using the Secure Rural Schools Title III funding for items 2, 3, and 4. And also, let's see, supervisor travel, and we've done a lot of travel this year, and I think it's great because we've got new energy, we've got people who really want to learn, and my understanding is that there's about $13,000 of travel that's just in general for supervisor travel throughout the year. It just seems like to be equitable and accountable is that it's not broken down by supervisor at this point, but seems like for fairness too is that maybe that $13,000 should be kind of split up for each supervisor. So maybe $2,500 per supervisor for travel. Some of us do represent NACO, some represent RCRC, some represent, CSAC, and then others want to go to enrich their knowledge and education opportunities, all that, networking. So it's very crucial, but at the same time, we have to live within our means too for that budget item. So I'm just thinking of ways to maintain that. And one way would be splitting it amongst the supervisors. So, okay, do you want to comment on that, or you want me to keep going?
I have a question, just
Okay.
because is my understanding the travel is based on the assignments. So I'm not sure that if not all the supervisors have the conference assignments, then I'm just wondering what the thought process is. Also, we as supervisors get training in our salary. That's included, and how we spend those funds is up to us. We get those on, it's quarterly. So that's an entirely different part of the budget.
Yeah. Just my understanding with looking at supervisor travel for out-of-county education and training, and then travel in general, is it's adds up to about $13,000. So it's not broken up by supervisor or anything like that. So how do we monitor ourselves when people want to go to conferences and travel, do these things, and yet still be accountable to the budget? That's the question. Supervisor Williams.
So, I mean, this county is approaching spending $500 million a year, and we're talking about just over $10,000 of travel funds. I think we need to focus on the largest expenditures first and work our way down to the smaller ones. This is like beyond budget dust. Not that we shouldn't be careful with every dollar, but I think we don't want to make the mistake of spending time negotiating over pocket change and never get to the tens of millions and the hundreds of millions that are spent on programs.
Okay, I mean, I think that we all need to be accountable for the budget, whatever area we're in, whether it's budget dust area or, big items. But anyway, I understand your point. Okay, and then lastly, is that we have, last year we had a 4-to-1 vote on approval of the budget, and it was because of my understanding was there an issue brought up about using one-time only funds, and that Supervisor Williams decided not to vote on it because of the use of one-time only funds, right? Certainly your prerogative. What I would like to know, and I think it would help staff in creating the budget, is if we have, at this point, items that are non-negotiable, like you're not going to vote for the budget if we use reserve money, or unless it has $1 million for roads, pothole fixing, or whatever. If there's a non-negotiable thing that you're saying, that's what I have to have, then let's hear it now so that staff has the opportunity to create a budget that reflects the will of the board. And it might be one person having that non-negotiable, and then we deal with it. If there's 3 people, then we got to really take that in consideration when we craft the budget. So just so we're all up front at the very beginning of this process. Supervisor Williams.
Yeah, a balanced budget is non-negotiable for me. I think it's our duty. Law makes it clear that that's our duty. It's not appropriate to use one-time funds to balance a budget for ongoing expenses. And I would agree with you on roads. I think $1 million is short. I think the public expects us to begin addressing the shortage in road funding. We gave raises, which were well-deserved. It was appropriate, but we didn't increase the overall budget. And so effectively, we squeezed the Department of Transportation to have less resources to do less work than before. I think we need to correct it this year. I think the public expects, I hear about roads more than any other issue. And so I couldn't vote on a budget that keeps roads where it is, and there needs to be an increase. Not to fix all of the roads, we're not going to get there, we're not repaving everything, but we need a reasonable maintenance budget that moves us in the right direction.
All right. Very good. Not seeing anything else from here. Sheriff Kendall, I see you back there, and we've talked about the budget and some of the expenses and overtime cost. If you'd like to, clarify any issues for us, or.
Thank you, members of the board, Chair Haschak, CEO Anthill, County Council Scott. Went over a lot of the budgeting yesterday. Now, this past year when we met with the supervisors and we built our budget, we're pretty darn close to being on track to perfect what we were given. But as we move into these things, it seems like the price of doing business has gone up, but the profit that we get from doing business has gone down. And so right now, the sheriff's office, we had about 2.3 million in overtime for patrol. I think 1.3 for the jail. So far in patrol, we've spent 1.6. In the jail, we've spent just a little over $1 million. So we're tracking to come in on budget, maybe a little bit short in the jail because we've had some things that are going on because people who are coming to jail are not as healthy as what they were 30 years ago. They simply aren't. And when a patrol car goes out in the middle of the night, has to take someone to the hospital or something like that, some of these folks are two-man moves, and we have to lock down the jail or call people in. Our top 5 expenditures for overtime are all related to staffing levels. Now our staffing levels are coming up, but we gain 3 and we lose 2. That's just the way that this game seems to be played nowadays. So our top 5 are staffing shortages, when we have to backfill for staffing shortages to have enough patrol cars on the street, and sometimes we're backfilling with 1 deputy sheriff to handle an entire area. In the north sector, there are times when we have to do that because that's all that we have. Mandated jail duties. We have to have so many personnel working, and trust me, if we ever got to a moment in time where I walked in and the jail commander, Captain Van Patten, said, hey, we got to close down 3 wings of the jail because nobody's committing crime, I am going to jump for joy. I think that that's something that we should work towards as a society. We get the problems worked out so that nobody goes to jail because crime disappears. Trust me, I've got plenty of things I can do in retirement. I wouldn't need to be here any longer. Next would be staffing backfill for sick time, vacation time, things like that, because I don't have, indentured servants. They do get some time off. Occasionally I have to send them to training, and you can either pay for training or you can pay for the lawsuits when someone is not trained. Shift extensions due to calls. When we have calls for service and investigations that are going on that begin, a lot of them are going on at noon, and when they happen in the Round Valley area, they happen in the Point Arena area, these out of the way places. Sometimes these deputies came to work at 6 o'clock in the morning. They'll catch a hot call at noon, and they don't get home until midnight because there is nobody to relieve them, especially when they've begun that investigation. And then extension of shifts for our reports. When we get done, we've got to have a report into the district attorney, and some of these cannot wait because he's going to be arraigning them the next day. If we don't turn those reports in, that subject gets released and we have more people victimized. Now, we have made some pretty good progress in some areas. The district attorney and our public defender are working together for a lot of the video arraignments and things like that. We're lowering the price of transportation. My hat's off to the district attorney and to Mick Hill because they are working with us to get these things done. We still have to pay for deputies who work night shifts to show up and go to court on day shifts. We have no say in who gets subpoenaed and who does not. That's a function of the court. But I don't know how we got to where we are. A lot of it I can link back to regulation of the state of California. I grew up in a time when the working man was a good thing and loggers and sawmillers could buy a home and raise a family. But now anybody who chops down a tree is evil, but we stand back and watch them burn to the ground. How did we get there? I don't know. I don't know. When I was a young man, a timber harvest permit looked like the hymnal in a church, and now it looks like a King James Bible. It's just ridiculous, the over-regulation of anything that puts people to work. Our county historically has been ag and resource driven, but any time that we go to remove resources and make industry out of it, it's looked at as something that's evil. I don't know why. I know that our sustained forest practices have greatly improved since the 1950s when my father was logging. We wouldn't do some of the things nowadays that they thought was standard back then. Why aren't we embracing some of this? And it seems like we put a lot of eggs in the marijuana basket over the years. That was a 50-year boom that is now becoming a bust. So I think whether we like it or not, we're going to have to reprioritize and try to get the working man back to work. Try to get people, when I hear that almost 50% of the county is on government assistance, one of the true tests of a government is how much do the people rely on it. If you get to that point where 50% of the people rely on the government for their existence, we don't have a good government. I don't know how we get around these things. I don't. But I'm just kind of a dumb Irish cop trying to get through this right now. Anyway, I understand things are going to be tight. One of the things that we're looking at, we're not going to be asking to be funded for positions that we can't fill. Myself and the undersheriff have been working on this every single day, trying to get these numbers down. We want to be good partners with the CEO's office. We want to be good partners with the board. Law enforcement and public safety is probably the most expensive thing that you folks are looking at, and it's the human resources that are the biggest expense. But we've got to have the best of the best, because if you don't, You can pay now or you can pay later, but later is going to come with interest. And that interest is in lawsuits. That interest is in loss of public trust. We can't have that. So let's continue to work together on these things.
Okay, yeah, thank you for those comments. Let's see, Supervisor Williams?
Sheriff Kendall, what is your projected increase this budget cycle? Just rounded to $1 million.
Right now, somewhere between $7 and $10 million.
More than last year. Okay.
A heck of a lot more, and it's a frightening thought when I look at it.
Yeah, so I appreciate your commentary. You're speaking for me, but you're not going to get the backlash I would get if I were to say those words.
I understand.
You couldn't create any of the towns or cities of Mendocino County today under current regulation and economics. No. And when we cry about the lack of housing, I think we're not taking into account we boxed ourselves in where we can't develop any and we don't have the wages. But these rules aren't set in this room, they're set in Sacramento.
You're absolutely correct, but as you folks were discussing the travel of the supervisors, a lot of people don't understand that these travel meetings that you guys take on are to work with Sacramento to try to deal with some of these ridiculous regulations, which may, and I hate to say it, but Northern California and Southern California, we may as well be two completely different states, if not two completely different countries. And so a lot of these decisions that are being made down there, if we don't have a voice from up here to say enough's enough, we get run over. And so when we talk about, you know, your travel budgets and things like that, that's, you know, a penny spent to save a dollar. And it's the type of thing where we have to have that representation in Sacramento or we will be run over continually. There are some things that have helped. The ADU project that the county has taken on. I know a lot of people who are, I just got done building an ADU for my father-in-law and mother-in-law in our pasture. We wouldn't have been able to build that home. And he and I, we built it with our two hands. We didn't hire anybody else. We couldn't have done it for the materials had the ADU plan not been in place for us because of all of these strange regulations that when I was in my 20s and 30s swinging a hammer, we didn't have those regulations. It drove the price of building a home probably almost quadrupled to what it was 20, 30 years ago when I was a young man. And without those restrictions, we were able to, my in-laws sold their house in Hopland. They put a certain amount of money away and said, can we build it for this? Yes, if we do it all ourselves. And, you know, we worked every night after work with the headlamps on our heads, and we were able to get it done. But I don't know that the rest of the world has that same ability. They just look at the base price. How do young people afford homes now? It's ridiculous. And I don't know of a whole lot of loggers, I don't know of a whole lot of sawmillers making the wage that they make who can afford a home. And, you know, second and third generation ranchers are losing their ranches to taxation, to overregulation, things like that. This has been a real issue.
So for the board, Chair, one of the ideas that came up in our workshop was the vertical yardstick of funding public safety first in the budget and then figuring out what we have left and how to allocate it fairly. Is that something we should be considering given I'm hearing a $7 to $10 million increase? Okay. What I don't want to see is, I don't want us to go back to the sheriff and tell him we can only give him 4. If he needs 7 to 10 to do the work that he did last year, the cost of doing the work has risen. I think we should fund that first in the budget proposal and then see what's left. Is that the way we're planning to operate this year?
My understanding is that's what's happening, and I think that the sheriff and the CEO are in conversations about how to make the budget work for the sheriff's office, and that we're going to get to a point where you know, it works for the whole county budget too. So I appreciate those conversations.
As Probation Chief Locatelli often says, you don't do more with less, you do less with less. That is just a fact. And there are times when something comes along that improves our ability to do things. I mean, you can move a lot more gravel with a bulldozer than what you can a shovel. But at times, we are just stuck with shovels, and that's what we have to do. And if we can't afford a 980 loader or a bulldozer, by golly, we've got shovels, and that's what we'll do. But we can't stay there forever. We've got to make these changes, and we got to go in the right direction. And a lot of it is starting with this chokehold the state seems to have on everything that would produce revenue and put people back to work. And we're in a frightening moment right now. We are. When I hear that almost 50% of the county is on some type of government assistance, I don't know how we got here. Anyway,
Okay,
thank you so much.
thank you, Sheriff. Right, seeing no further comment from the board, we'll go to public comment. Any public comment in the chamber? Seeing none. Any online?
Seeing none.
All right, go back to the board. So I guess we're looking for a motion that I would like to see includes the Title III funding to secure rural schools and anything else. Supervisor Williams.
Move approval with the Title III recommendation.
Second.
Right? Any further comment from the board? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote by the button.
The motion carries unanimously.
All right, very good. So we will take a break for till 11:05. Right?
Yo creo que si conozco a alguien que está próxima a ser mamá, lo primero que haría sería recomendarle el programa porque te entrega mucho apoyo, mucha información y más que nada como apoyo emocional, una guía, te da una visión diferente de cómo es ser papá aquí, quizás en este país.
Y así pues es algo, un bonito programa, porque pues es buena persona la señora y los ha atendido muy bien.
Pensé que nada más iba a ser un programa de orientación quizás para los nuevos padres, pero creo que nos llevamos una linda sorpresa porque Gaby es una persona muy cercana a nosotros, es como parte de nuestra familia, siempre ha estado dispuesta a ayudarnos y a escucharnos con nuestras dudas sobre la paternidad y en nuestro caso que estamos solos en este país ha sido como de mucha ayuda.
Es un gran apoyo para nuevos padres y más aún si están en nuestra situación, que somos extranjeros, que nuestra familia y amigos, como dice Carla, están en otro país, lejos. Entonces sí, viene muy bien el programa para apoyarse tanto emocional y como anímicamente y bueno, en varios aspectos del programa que nos ayuda a seguir adelante con esta nueva aventura.
Te ayuda como a ver los distintos recursos que tiene la comunidad para nuevos papás, entonces creo que es de gran ayuda.
No queda mucho que agregar, pero lo veo de la misma forma.
Que hemos aprendido algunas cosas aquí y pues los han ayudado, como este programa los ha ayudado para seguir creciendo a la bebé, como con buenos consejos y así.
Sí, y creo que también ha sido muy importante el tema de apoyarnos con el libro y saber qué actividades hacer con Máximo de acuerdo a su edad, cómo estimularlo, cómo cuidarlo de los peligros de la casa, como cosas que uno como papá nuevo no conoce, claro.
Pues a mí me gustaría que lo siguiéramos visitando aquí en la biblioteca de Covelo. Está tranquilo y muy bonito aquí.
Cuando no nos podemos reunir, nos comunicamos por Zoom o una llamada telefónica o por texto.
Donde nos visite, porque ha sido nuestra casa, a veces nosotros vamos a Willits y puede ser en el parque. Gaby llega, como hacemos un resumen de cómo ha ido nuestra semana o qué hemos hecho de nuevo, cómo va el trabajo. Luego hacemos las actividades del libro. Vemos si podemos hacer un juguetito nuevo para Máximo, a veces ella lo evalúa, cómo está su sentido motriz, qué ha aprendido de nuevo, nuevas palabras y jugamos un ratito y conversamos.
A mí personalmente también me ayudó mucho a obtener mi licencia a conducir, que era un objetivo que teníamos en cuanto a la familia,
sí,
para poder estar tranquilos, así que encuentro que ha sido fundamental el apoyo.
El objetivo del programa es que las familias estén bien y que las familias estén bien significa niños felices, niños sanos, y eso en un futuro es adultos sanos y un mundo mejor. Entonces, está bueno.
She has made me feel like I'm important and I can go at my own pace, and that's all you need sometimes when you're feeling like you got nobody.
It was helpful to have somebody there kind of holding my hand and guiding me and letting me know this is kind of the normal. It felt like I was becoming a new mom, so it was very interesting and helpful, very, very helpful.
You know, there was that self-conscious part of me, like, will I be accepted even though I'm not perfect?
What I like the most is that she really listens.
The support that she gives me is special because she does it with love, and it's just natural, you know? That's all I could say. It just feels like somebody that I've known since I was little.
You know, I said to Jeanette, Jeanette, you're supposed to be with me for 5 years. Jeanette said, yeah, I know, I'm going to be with you guys for 5 years. That's when I said, well, I guess I can trust her. She's going to be with us for 5 years.
Yo creo que quizás pasó como a la segunda visita o algo así, como que ya nos presentamos formalmente. Y luego ya creo que en la segunda visita estaba como todo más tranquilo, como muy, como que el ambiente era muy familiar. Entonces yo me sentí muy cómoda.
I felt like she cared for Sparrow too, and Sparrow really enjoyed it. Yeah, she knew when Gabby came we were going to be making something or learning something, and she'd instantly start digging through Gabby's bags to find out what activity we were gonna do.
Not only did we get the assistance with this program, but we also made a really good friend. I'm happy to call Gabby our friend.
I think the relationship that we've built has been just, she's a part of the family.
Are you prepared? We're the Office of Emergency Services, and we're committed to providing the most up-to-date and accurate information so that you and your family can stay safe during an emergency. Visit mendoready.org. It's our one-stop shop for emergency information. You can sign up for emergency alerts, find your pre-established evacuation zone on our current emergencies map, and find hazard and preparedness information.
Imagine you're faced with a disaster such as a wildfire, and you're ordered to evacuate. I'll bet you wish you had more time in that moment. Now's your chance to buy yourself that time. Sign up for Nixle and Mendo Alerts on our website, mendoready.org. Do it today.
If you want your family to be as resilient as possible, it's important to take some time today and visit mendoready.org, where you can look up your pre-established evacuation zones on our current emergencies map. You can also find important tools to help maintain your situational awareness, such as the Alert California wildfire cameras and the Caltrans road conditions cameras. We hope you'll take some time today to prepare so that your family can be Mendo ready. Thank you.
When I first realized that I was going to be a parent, I was super scared. After 2 or 3 weeks of meeting in the home visiting program, I was totally comfortable with the fact that I was going to have a baby. Yes, I was still scared, but at the same time, I felt like I had some sense of strength behind me.
If I didn't have those resources that Jeanette provided me, I think it would be harder now.
I got into the program and I realized like, oh, this is nice. And now look at me, I work at a family resource center with parents and families, all this stuff.
I'm so grateful that I got the opportunity to meet my home visitor, because without her, I think that I would be 10 steps behind from where I'm at right now.
Pero pues aquí pues ya los enseñan un poquito más cosas que uno no sabía. Como cómo cuidarla, cómo desarrollarla, cómo educarla, y pues es algo bien porque pues cosas que yo no sabía, pues ya usted nos las dijo y todo como consejos, y pues muchas cosas que se aprendieron.
I don't know what's normal for a 22-month-old baby or an 18-month-old baby, you know. When we get together, we usually discuss and get some progress made with the baby. It makes me feel comfortable, and I associate my parenting with her, my home visitor, telling me, yeah, this is going great.
So it's nice to know where they're at, what stage they're at for every parent, and also to give, again, your children that head start in education.
If I had any questions with her, just call her up on the phone. You know, it was very relatable, very personal. And, you know, with her getting to know my kids, you know, she got to kind of help guide me along the way. I mean, there were so many cool things that I've learned.
I went from a very rough type of life. I was homeless, and she was able to help me get into school, and I actually have enough credits to graduate with the business degree right now.
I think I really want to mention just that I'm grateful that I took advantage, because it's something that has put me in touch with my child, or closer to my child and her development.
I want other people and parents to know that the home visiting is not something that you should be afraid of. It's actually something that is needed.
You know, because she's not just here for her, she's here to help with all of it. She helped me create a safe space where I feel comfortable enough to ask for help.
Don't be afraid to take that step. Like, don't be afraid to get help. It's always okay to have extra support.
I would say, give it a try. You got nothing to lose. It's free. There's some perks.
So we're going to go to item 4D, which is the notice public hearing. Discussion and possible action, including adoption of resolution approving an application for funding and the execution of a grant agreement and any amendments thereto from the 2023 and or 2024 funding year of the State Community Development Block Grant Program to utilize program income award in the amount of $407,385.76 for the county's Economic Development Technical Assistance and Micro Enterprise Assistance Program. Okay, has proper notice been established?
Proper notice has been established, and all correspondence, if any, has been sent to your email.
Okay, I will open the public hearing. Okay, so we've noted correspondence and telephone calls received. Okay, so we have a staff presentation by Kelly Hansen. Okay, Ms. Hansen.
Good morning, Chair Hasjack, members of the board, CEO Antle, County Council Scott, Kelly Hansen, Executive Office, Grants Unit. The Grants Unit is here today for a public meeting mandated by the California Department of Housing and Community Development, HCD, regarding the county's revised Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, application for the proposed Economic Development Technical Assistance and Micro Enterprise Assistance Program utilizing program income. As you may recall, back in February 27th, 2024, the board provided direction on the use of program income funds. This led to the submission of a program income application for this activity to HCD, authorized by board resolution number 24-033, which requested $163,195 in CDBG funding. This application was submitted to HCD on May 3rd, 2024. Following the closeout of a separate CDBG grant, the Business Assistance and Recovery Loan Program, in the fall of 2024, HCD clarified that any unspent funds from that grant must be either incorporated into an active CDB application or returned to the state. Based on prior board discussions, the staff anticipated these funds would now remain in the county's program income fund. In response to this new information, the Grants Division collaborated closely with HCD to amend the existing microenterprise application to include the unspent funds of $119,169.49 from the closed out grant. In line with HCD's recommendation, further program income funds have been incorporated to expand staff hours for technical assistance, a new workshop component, digital outreach, and resources, raising the revised total project budget to $407,385.76. As this budget increase exceeds 25%, HCD requires a new board resolution and a public hearing before the county can submit the revised application. Should it be approved, the CEO or their designee will execute the necessary documents to finalize this application. Currently, the county has approximately $1,028,733.47 in program income available for eligible projects before the submission of this application. Future planning for these funds will be brought to the board for their direction. At this time, the Grants Unit invites comments on the proposed application revision.
Okay, any comments from the board? Supervisor Williams?
I'd move the recommended action.
Let's hold off on that. Okay. Let's see, are there seeing no comments from the board, let's go to public comment. Okay, seeing no public comment in the chambers, any online?
Seeing none online.
All right. So staff, do you have any final remarks?
I will just note that we have issued an RFP for community projects for the remaining program income, which is just over $600,000. If community organizations have projects, you have until April 3rd to submit them to the executive office by 2 p.m.
Right. Any further comments from the board? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Okay, now the matter is before the board. Okay, now we'll look for a motion.
Move the recommended action.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded. Okay. And we will vote by the button.
The motion carries unanimously.
Very good. Okay, we'll go to item 4E, the Chief Executive Officer's report.
Nothing to report today.
Okay, we will go to item 4F, LED's platform.
Nothing to report today.
All right, and item 4G, Supervisors Reports. So we'll go to Supervisor Norvell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of notes. I did attend the NACO Legislative Conference in DC. I did get to speak to a lot of different supervisors from rural counties about addressing homelessness and what the county's doing in comparison to other places. I did get to do several ride-alongs in DC. The idea there was to get an understanding of how they're dealing with the issue, and the short answer is they are not. They've got other priorities that, criminal priorities that they're attending to, so there's not a lot of effort there, and, of course it shows. It's unfortunate. I did have the opportunity to meet with Dr. Marbut in DC for a couple of hours. I was able to bring Supervisor Klein along. We got a little bit of an insight about what's happening in this department in the White House. We got to ask several questions, which of course he had several answers to. So that was encouraging. We also did get to meet somebody that walked in the room that's a friend of his, a gentleman with Citygate Network, who has several facilities across the country. They were there speaking to different groups in DC about their programs and why they work. And then they also have a facility in Fresno that Supervisor Klein and I are hoping to tour in the near future. And then lastly, I've been talking about the crisis with the suicide attempts on the Noyo Bridge and the potential for signs going up. I'm happy to let the public know that the signs went up. They're on either end of the bridge, and I believe in the middle. That's it for me.
Supervisor Mulhern.
Thank you. At the last Behavioral Health Advisory Board meeting, we had a presentation about 5150s, why people are held, what happens when they're held, and how their families should be prepared either before or during a 5150 hold. We talked about the confidentiality. We also had an update about the mobile outreach and prevention services, which is now county-wide in Mendocino County. And currently the Mental Health Services Act is updating the 3-year program expenditures plan. The plan runs from 23 to 26. And we received a report on the annual summary for years 23-24 and 24-25. And that plan, the Mental Health Services Act, is open for public comment through April 4th, and that's on the Behavioral Health tab of the county website.
Supervisor Williams.
I met with Assemblymember Rogers' office, and a couple topics that came up. Bower Park, we're probably overdue for an update on how that project is moving. It's been quite some time. That was a direct allocation from the state of California from the Assemblymember Wood. And the hospital, and I've been engaged with a couple of the directors on the coast. I'm looking at the rebuild that's required by 2030. Otherwise, it closes doors due to seismic requirements. I've been authoring a list of the questions I have about county spending over past years, specific projects where I'd like to know what the outcome was. And rather than waste time in this meeting, I plan to submit it in writing. And what I hear from constituents most, 2 topics keep surfacing: roads, that we need to get serious about and enhanced funding for road repairs, and insurability. A lot of people are losing insurance or finding the premiums are far above what they can afford. And that's a big lift for the county, but there may be some opportunities for us to partner. One of the biggest obstacles is lack of hydrants, right? Credible water source for a fire, both practically and in terms of insurance rating. And Anderson Valley, as you know, is installing sewer water, drinking water, and waste and fire water. There may be more money in that fund for fire suppression water that the county should be looking at, partnering with communities that have interest, density, and an applicable use case. But I think that's if we don't make progress on water, it'll be hard to move the needle on insurability.
Supervisor Klein.
Yeah, thank you. I also attended NACO, the National Association of Counties, the legislative conference. There was a large delegation of California supervisors. I was able to connect with some county supervisors from other states: Arizona, Idaho, Utah, Oregon, rural communities like ours facing issues similar to ours. As Supervisor Norvell mentioned, we met with Dr. Marbut to discuss homelessness on a national scale. Supervisor Mulhern and I met with Congressman Jared Huffman and advocated for our local water supply. If the dams at the Potter Valley project are to be removed, we need to have additional storage in both Lake Mendocino via raising Coyote Dam and in Potter Valley for the irrigation district. The policy committees of NACO were shedding light on what they'll be reaching out to work on with this new administration, or not that new administration, but this current administration. One committee is focused on NEPA, permitting reform. NEPA is National Environmental Policy Act, which is something that I hope to be tracking closely. And then there's also a working group from Lake, Napa, and Nevada counties around fire insurance that I learned about and hope to support those initiatives. It's not just a state issue, although the majority of the conversation is at a state level. Additionally, I'm working with Assemblymember Rogers and his office on his legislation, AB 830, which would allow Caltrans to pay for moving utility lines when a Caltrans project requires the lines to be moved to complete their project. There's an ADA and safety improvement project happening in downtown Hopland on the 101 that I've mentioned previously and that some of the other supervisors are well aware of. That project's now bifurcated into 2 phases because of the issues with the public utility district not having enough notice for the requirement to move their lines and the cost impact to the 300 ratepayers that would have to burden those funds. So I'm optimistic about the impacts that this could have, particularly to rural communities like ours. And thank you to the chair for signing our letter of support for AB 830. And then just kind of to echo some of the comments I've heard from my colleagues, the 2 main things that I hear from constituents are road maintenance, road repair. Every single day I receive text messages, phone calls, pictures, comments on Facebook about how the county needs to step up their road maintenance and road infrastructure. And then additionally, a lot of concerns and fear around loss of water through the Potter Valley project. Thank you.
All right. I attended the Measure B meeting, and there was talk about updating the RFP for substance misuse and treatment. And so I look forward to using, Measure B funds in those realms of because that was part of the initial goals of Measure B was to deal with substance abuse or misuse. So CEO Antle and I met with Senator McGuire. We talked about a Covelo fire hydrant system and the possibility of that and trying to get some funds through the state for it, because without that, they really can't rebuild. So looking forward to some movement on that in the state budget. CEO Antle and I also met with the Hopland tribe, and we talked about issues about roads and also the Great Redwood Trail and some of the issues they're having with both of those. When we met with Senator McGuire, it was he was talking about $14 billion in Medicaid cuts to the state, which would certainly impact the county, and $6 to $7 billion in education cuts. Okay, and I know that he was talking about 50 in Mississippi, like 55% of the people are Medicaid eligible, and those cuts would certainly hurt places like that. But here in Mendocino County, with 47%, it's we're up there too. So it's those cuts will be very hard for residents in Mendocino County. I've also heard a lot from veterans and people concerned about cuts to Social Security and social services. So those are certainly on a lot of people's minds. I attended the Women's History event, which was a great celebration of women doing incredible things in our county. I went to, as a representative of MSERA, I went to the California Association of Public Employee Retirement Systems. There were lots of good presentations, certainly on AI and healthcare. And so just incredible things happening in those realms. And, these people who invest our public pension funds into those programs need to know, the risk and the possibilities there. I also went to the CalCog meeting because I'm the representative of MCOG there, and talking about the RENA, trying to redo how RENA is done. That's the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, and certainly you hear horror stories from around the state about what different jurisdictions are being asked of what we have to do to be in compliance with RENA. I went to the Sonoma Clean Power meeting. Let's see, they're looking at doing a feasibility study for incorporating Clear Lake right now into the Sonoma Clean Power, which is right now just Mendocino and Sonoma counties. And we're looking at educational partnerships. Certainly the Sonoma Water Agency is outreaching and trying to provide, educational opportunities for schools. Let's see, the legislative update was trying to streamline the permitting process for geothermal in the Sonoma and Mendocino areas and Lake. So that's a possible win at the state level. And then also we talked about investment opportunities to reduce ratepayer cost. And that's what Sonoma Clean Power has been doing. They're 7% below the PG&E cost. And so, and it's cleaner. Okay. There's a cannabis economic development meeting on the 27th. It's going to be at the Willits Community Center. It's from 10 o'clock till 12:30. And so you can go to the Mendocino County Economic Development webpage to get more information about that. And that's about it. Supervisor Klein.
Yeah, thank you. Quick question on Sonoma Clean Power's inquiry of including Clear Lake. Are they not considering Lake County as a whole? And why would it just be Clear Lake?
Because they got a request from the council of Clear Lake, and so that's where they're going. But if that's feasible, then they'll include the rest of Sonoma, Lake County, if that's what the supervisors request. So, all right. And with that, we will adjourn the meeting at 12:25. 11:25. Okay, meeting adjourned.